This is Russia, the world's ninth largest economy, which has shaken the entire world at the moment, and the biggest threat to Russia is NATO. NATO, also known as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is actually an agreement between the United States and these 30 countries of Europe that they will defend each other's freedom and security together. This means that if any of these 30 countries is attacked, all these countries will defend it together. But this alliance is going to suffer a big blow very soon. There is a big weakness in NATO which is going to make it much weaker than Russia. If we come to the North Atlantic Ocean, here is the island that ruled the entire world for almost 400 years. This island founded NATO together with the United States. This island is also called the United Kingdom of England or the UK. The UK is currently going through the worst crisis in its history. But because the votes in England and Wales were slightly higher than in Scotland, Britain left the European Union. Now, because Scotland is considered part of the UK, Scotland also automatically left the European Union, although the majority of Scotland wanted it to remain part of the European Union. Scotland now has only one way to rejoin the European Union, which is to separate from Britain. But now the real question is, what difference does Scotland's separation make to NATO? Why are experts saying that if Scotland separates from the UK, not only the UK can be destroyed, but NATO's power will also be badly compromised? Why is Scotland so important to the UK and NATO? In fact, if I say that Scotland is NATO's biggest weakness, it will not be wrong. But why is this? Scotland has become a nightmare for the UK and NATO. I know it is true that in this video. Now, because Scotland is considered part of the UK, Scotland also automatically left the European Union, although the majority of Scotland wanted it to remain part of the European Union. Scotland now has only one way to rejoin the European Union, which is to separate from Britain. But now the real question is, what difference does Scotland's separation make to NATO? Why are experts saying that if Scotland separates from the UK, not only the UK can be destroyed, but NATO's power will also be badly compromised? Why is Scotland so important to the UK and NATO? In fact, if I say that Scotland is NATO's biggest weakness, it will not be wrong. But why is this? Scotland has become a nightmare for the UK and NATO. I know it is true that in this video. First of all, let us find the answer to the question of how the separation of Scotland will affect the UK. Scotland has this part of the sea called the North Field, and it has 31 of the largest oil reserves in the world. The UK meets 90% of its oil requirements with the oil from this North Field and has to import only 10% of its oil from outside. Due to these oil reserves compared to other European countries which are not dependent on any external country for their energy requirements, and that is why even after the Russian-Ukrainian war, it did not face the energy crisis as severely as Germany and other European countries did. For example, Germany now imports 50% of its gas and 40% of its oil from Russia, while the UK imports only 4% of its gas and 9% of its oil from Russia. That is why when Russia attacked Ukraine, the UK made a big decision. It was easy to impose import sanctions on Russia, but now the biggest question is what will happen to these oil reserves if Scotland separates from the UK. If Scotland separates from the UK, it will take with it the entire domestic oil industry of Britannia, because by becoming an independent country, Scotland will have the right to have its own maritime economic zone, which is also called the EEZ or exclusive economic zone in technical language. And the zone will look something like this. Scotland will have the right to all the resources found in this zone, and if we look at the UK's oil and gas reserves, after the partition they will be something like this. We can see that about 95% of the UK's oil reserves will come under the control of Scotland, and then Scotland can do whatever it wants with these resources. And here is the most important thing: the oil reserves found in the North Field will increase rapidly, or are running out, and Scotland may stop importing oil to the UK to sell them. And the biggest disadvantage of this will be that the UK will have to go to other countries for its energy requirements, and thus the competitive advantage that the UK had over the rest of the European countries will be completely gone. Since the Russia-Ukraine war, the price of oil has been continuously rising, and as a result, the profits of the UK's oil industry have also doubled, and this has further pumped Scotland to seek independence from the UK, because the majority of oil is coming out of Scottish waters and its profits are going to the UK. Similarly, another threat to the UK is that if Scotland separates from the UK, There are very high chances that Northern Ireland will also raise its voice for independence, and thus the British Empire will collapse in a few years and only England and Wales will remain. It will be registered by now. Now we come to the second question. What is the impact of Scotland being separated on NATO? If Scotland separates from the UK, it will have two choices. The first option is to reapply to become a member of NATO, and then it will have to go through a long bureaucratic procedure. The second option is to become neutral like Ireland and not become a part of NATO. But in both these cases, there is a loss for NATO. In fact, there are many military bases of the British in northern and southern Scotland, such as the Lascimouth base, the Luggers base, and the Cummingsby base. Through these bases, the UK protects its borders from any external threats. The most important of them is the Lascimouth base because this is where Russian jets pass and keep an eye on the whole of Europe. In fact, when Russia occupied Crimea in 2014, the Russian Air Force planes flew very close to the UK. They used to frequently pass through this route, and the British Air Force used to intercept these jets repeatedly through this base. But if Scotland becomes independent, there are many chances that it will vacate these bases from the Britons, and as a result, the UK's air defense will be badly compromised. But the matter does not end there. There is something even more dangerous for NATO than this, all these marine bases which are called fast lane. There is no more important naval base in this entire region because the UK's nuclear submarines are here, and in the event of any nuclear attack, this is the base that can save the UK. The location of this base was chosen very strategically during the Cold War. This base is actually near the Duke Gap. The Duke Gap is the most important area of all the oceans in our world because this is the area through which Russian submarines can pass and attack the United States, Canada, and Europe. In fact, Russia's largest naval base is the Severomorsk base, which is located in the north of Russia and is also the headquarters of the Russian Northern Fleet. Russia's 11 nuclear submarines are located near this base. There is all the ice on the left side of this base, and this is the only route for Russian submarines to attack America and Europe. Russia's 4 nuclear submarines are always patrolling near this gap area. And the UK keeps a close eye on this entire part of the sea to avoid any nuclear threat through this base. But if Scotland separates from the UK, this entire flank will be completely empty because in 2014, the Scottish government had set this condition in the referendum that if we win the vote, we will vacate the fast lane and other bases from Britain. So the independence of Scotland will only mean that now the UK will have to build bases somewhere else, and it will cost billions of pounds. And even after spending so much money, it is difficult to get bases in such great locations because AdMax NATO can build such bases either in France or in the USA, and both these countries are very far from the GOK gap. These bases are also necessary because in September 2022, Vladimir Putin's advisor threatened on TV that if the UK does not end the sanctions on Russia, and if the US does not change its aggressive stance against Russia, then Russian nuclear missiles can target London. Exactly a year before this threat, there was a debate in the UK that the UK no longer needs nuclear weapons because no one will attack the UK with nuclear weapons. But then, after Russia's threat, these nuclear bases have once again become a great necessity for both the UK and NATO. That is why negotiations are being held with Scotland to withdraw its decision to become independent. But at the moment, this does not seem to be happening. Another major loss that will occur from Scottish independence is communication. In fact, 95% of the world's internet cables are located in this part of the Atlantic Ocean. Through these cables, all continents are connected to each other. We use the internet, and through these communication lines, America communicates with its soldiers in Europe and Asia. If these bases are lost to the UK, there is a very high chance that Russian submarines will also cut these communication lines, and this has happened in the past. About a month before Russia invaded Ukraine in January 2022, a fiber optic cable between the land and Svalbard Island in Norway was mysteriously cut. Svalbard Island is home to the world's largest satellite ground station, where Western agencies monitor Russia's military advances. A few days ago, Norwegian intelligence detected Russian submarines in this part of the ocean. If Scotland is separated, the communication lines of Europe and the United States will also be compromised. These are all the reasons why Scotland is the biggest weakness of both NATO and the UK, and its independence can cause great harm to both. Finally, here are all the sources from which we consulted for this video. If you like this video, if so, be sure to like it and subscribe to the channel because we are bringing videos on many interesting topics and we hope you like them. See you in the next video, God willing.